I take a picture of them all the time. They know me on that. I just couldn't find it.
Did you get stuff?
I feel like I made extra today.
Recording in progress.
How are you?
Fresh.
It is a little cleaner, but it's fresh and not much fresher.
Tori.
Tori. Tori, has large BAR passed the last night? Okay, so it's just us. So it's conform.
It's like it's after.
Well, no, but it's after this meeting.
If we pass it, then it's.
Oh, well. No, because we have to approve. It needs to, we have to approve. Well, I was gonna ask if we just leave it up. Because Natalie's here.
Yeah,
She doesn't need to.
We'll,
Yeah, we'll do it. So, we'll do the.
Potentially.
I-
at least in spirit.
Yeah. Because we need to approve, it needs to be. You approve the meeting minutes. I don't think they. Give me the, that's after the meeting. Thoughts and changes.
Yes.
Tori, city architect Magali, is it assistant corporation council? I know it's corporation council, but it. All right, everyone. Welcome to the October 27th, 2022 BAR Small Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present with me today are Glenn Gardner, Fillmore Wilson, Bill Huey, and Julia Martin. City staff present today are Frankie Pinto, BARS Administrator, Tori, City Architect, Isabel Gordon-Neer, Preservation Planner, and Magali Creech, Assistant Corporation Counsel. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. Each application will start with an introduction and overview from city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. Then we'll move into the applicant's presentation. We have a 10-minute time limit. And anyone speaking on behalf of the project, developers, designers, owners should all speak during this period, during public comment. If you are speaking, please state your name. Please approach the microphone and state your name first and last for the record. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. Again, if you are speaking as a member of the public, please approach the microphone and state your name very clearly first and last for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Once you've heard from the public and city staff, the applicant will have a 5-minute response period. This is not a time to reopen your presentation. The purpose of it is to clarify or to respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations. Once we've heard the applicant respond, the public comment and the applicant's presentation will be closed and we'll move into board discussion and a vote. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred this evening: 119 Broad Street and 139 Whitworth Street. If there are students present, we are glad to have you with us. After you've stayed for the appropriate amount of time, if you will go to Isabella Fournier, right here, raise your hand. If you'll go to see Isabella, she'll sign the name on your form so that you get credit. And now I'll turn it over to Frankie for some meeting protocol.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. All right. Information on each application, including documents submitted by the applicant, as well as post-meeting results and staff comments, will be available online. To view or participate in board meeting, we have the in-person option as well as streaming it on Zoom. Written public comment were due yesterday at 12 noon, just one business day before the meeting. Comments were to include name, address, phone number, meeting date, project number. Written comments were provided to the board 24 hours in advance of the meeting and will be acknowledged into the record and summarized. All applicants have been required to register and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff can control the presentation. I do also have a clicker for those applicants who would like to control it themselves. It's up on the podium. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor, and the chair shall reread the motion verbatim. Board member making the motion should correct the chair if she has not reread the motion accurately. Agenda item A.
All right, agenda item A is review of the minutes from the October 13th, 2022 meeting. I'll make a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, all in favor, say aye. None opposed, the motion passes unanimously. All right, Julie, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like if we could, consider the last item on the agenda now, which is, item number 13.
All right, we have a motion on the floor, to hear agenda item number 13 at this time. Do I have a second? Glenn, all in favor? None opposed. All right, we are on agenda item number 13, which is the review of the new BAR policy statement for historic materials demolition purview. And Frankie, I assume that Tori's just going to take it away.
She is.
Start it.
If you want to go ahead and start, I will get to the slides in just a second.
I'll kick it off. As many of you know, we have been encouraged, our staff has been encouraged to develop a policy statement for the very challenging area that is the historic materials demolition area. This area is north of Line Street, south of Mount Pleasant, excluding the historic border district. We have a slide to show you how much of that peninsula that incorporates. It's a very large portion. And our BAR staff, as you know, because some of these items are elevated to the board, we are constantly getting repairs and replacement requests, and they are seen in the filter of the demolition because that's ultimately what they are. Is we're removing a character defining feature or a character defining element, some historic materials, historic fabric, and so we're kind of forced into looking at these demolitions. So this policy statement that we are working on is an effort to provide some clarity to our process, but also make some accommodations for modern day materials that would appropriately replace those elements. So the gray area is the historic materials demolition purview. Up until 2017 or 2018, this was considered, we looked at whole building demolition, not portions of buildings, not elements. And we used the 2004 architectural survey by Barkington and Associates, where these properties were categorized 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm gonna get to the numbers on that too, but in 2018, we began looking at demolition of portions and pieces. Right, next slide. Oh, wait just a minute. Am I the first one to try this out?
No, we tried it last time.
Okay. This is the 2004 survey of the Upper Peninsula by Barkington and Associates. It's important to note that there are 4,600 properties in the survey, only 2,100 of which are actually surveyed. Rely on this consistently. Another little plug for the fact that we need an updated survey. The way you're familiar with the architectural categories, but what's important to note here is that between the categories of 1, 2, 3, 4, number 1 being exceptional, with 4 being a contributor, it's important to note these numbers, that of those But of those 2,100 properties, there are only 34 category ones and 60 category twos, and I'll tell you why that's important in a few minutes. This map's important because our proposed policy is going to break the properties into two groups that rely on the architectural categories I just mentioned. The blue indicates categories 3 and 4, the red indicates category 1 and 2 properties. So this map really helps you to get a feel for how many cat 1 and 2 properties we're really talking about. And the gray properties were not surveyed, so that's important to note also. When I get to the policy and we break these properties into two groups, group 2 is going to be the green, and group 1, the more restrictive category, are the red properties. The blue notes National Historic Districts. I'm going to pause here and get to the policy, which you have in front of you, as do I. So noted that the policy breaks properties into group 1 and group 2. Group 1 are those category 1 and 2 buildings from the 2004 survey. This also includes buildings that are individually eligible or listed on the National Register, and buildings that are within an eligible or listed National Historic District. Group 2 properties are categories 3 and 4 and all the buildings not surveyed. So again, that's half the properties up there were not surveyed, and a large portion of the ones that were are 3s and 4s. That's what this note. I'll get back to the bottom note. Policy also comes with an FAQ statement that we're working on. I will admit that that is not as polished as it could be, so we're not asking you to adopt the FAQs and the resource page, but these are documents that can be changed in fluid. If you adopt the policy, the FAQs are something that we see as a fluid document. We'll be updating as things go. There's also a resource page for financial resources information on grants and loans and tax credits. I think there's a large portion of property owners that don't understand the tax credit system. They don't understand how to access those. So we'd like to start bridging that gap and being more of a resource in that way. There's also repair and technical information, links to the NPS preservation briefs and that sort of thing. I think that we see on a daily basis the fact that there's not a lot of knowledge on preventative maintenance and repair and how some of these repairs can be done yourself. BAR staff is always going to encourage repair over replacement. So I just want to make that a well-known fact. But we are feeling the pressure, and I know property owners feel the pressure of repairs that might be difficult, and they're faced with a BAR staff that is in the position where we're in a position where we have to say no a lot. And we hear from city council, we hear pressure that what can we do to alleviate property owners' concerns, and we've actually had to sort of step back and look at this holistically of if we can make some appropriate replacements and we can use some modern day materials in an appropriate manner and consider that a repair in kind or a replacement in kind, are we doing a better job of preserving the whole structure? If we can get somebody's windows that need to be repaired, if we can be a little bit more accommodating for some replacement materials, are we ultimately doing a better job of preserving the fabric of the neighborhood? So that's where we're at. And we also would like to let you know that we're adding a portion here that is on your policy statement as a footnote that takes any property that has been lived in as a primary residence for over 25 years, is a known heirs property, or is owned by someone making less than the 80% AMI, they would shift down to the category, to the group 2 property. To the group 2 in the policy statement, so they would have a little bit more flexibility. I know this is hard for us as preservationists to think about modern day materials. We put a lot of thought into what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. And I want you to think of the policy statement as a document that's not written in stone. It's something that we test out for a month or two. If we need to make tweaks, that's something that this board and the other board definitely have the freedom to do.
Up and ask a
Absolutely.
question on that category. You mentioned the exception to this, that the owned it for 25 years or longer, heirs property, or the income requirements. But it says except those listed individually on the National Register. So if it's individually listed, then regardless, and there's so few of those that it makes sense. But then it says or contributing to a district listed on the National Register.
Do you want to talk about that as well? Because you did a lot of work in that.
What is the contributing to?
So,
Isabella did a lot of the really great mapping, and so that's why we have really great visuals and numbers there.
so if it's contributing, it's denoted on that, we have a spreadsheet now, it's on the website, we just uploaded it the other day. So, the contributing to the National Register District, we just believe that, those are helping, validate that National Register nomination, that those should, stay with the National Register properties themselves in that same kind of grouping.
Got it. So that's a defined list
I'm
on
gonna
the city
go here to
website.
this map so you can
Okay.
talk about the listed districts.
Yeah, so these are our two listed districts within the north of Lyme, and then we have, the Wilson's Farm Tract, which, is eligible to be a National Register District, though it is not currently, so,
So currently listed are Hampton Park Terrace and Mansfield House. And that's the blue.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Please, go ahead. Thank you.
That's really all I have. I mean, I'd like to open it up for the public. That's all this applicant needs to share at this point.
All right. Do we have any public comment?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. We've been intently following the conversations with City Hall on the BAR demolition purview in the district north of Line Street. This district includes some really great neighborhoods whose architecture captures and tells important parts of Charleston's history, culture, and worthy of celebration and preservation. At the same time, we recognize the ambiguity in the regulations and the confusion and frustrations that have ensued for homeowners living in this district. HCF supports the BAR policy changes that would enhance accessibility for homeowners, alleviate confusion, provide flexibility in replacement materials, protect the most significant buildings, and preserve naturally occurring affordable housing for longtime peninsula residents. We've been working with the planning and preservation staff and our colleagues at the Preservation Society to accomplish these goals through this amended policy statement. We look forward to continued work with you and the BAR members, and our hope is to make these goals a reality very soon. Thank you.
Laura Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society has been pleased to be closely engaged on the development of this policy for neighborhoods north of Line Street, and we are here to underscore our support for what we feel is an appropriate solution to concerns raised by citizens regarding confusion and complexity experienced in the BAR process. This policy strikes a balance of allowing residents greater flexibility to conduct repairs and upgrades to their homes while ensuring neighborhood character is retained. We are also highly supportive of reducing barriers for low-income and long-term homeowners to maintain and improve their properties so they can remain downtown. We feel this policy is a win-win that creates a fair and balanced approach to preservation of these important historic neighborhoods and streamlining the process to the benefit of everyone involved, homeowners, design professionals, and city administrators alike. Therefore, we urge the board to move forward with the adoption of the policy statement. However, we do feel it's worth mentioning that the supplemental FAQ sheet needs refinement. The current question and answer structure is a bit challenging to follow, and more information could be provided on pre-approved materials for other elements discussed in the policy statement beyond windows, such as siding and roofing. These products should be thoroughly vetted by members of the BAR with opportunity for local design professionals to weigh in. Greater clarity on these replacement options will provide transparency to the public and allow the majority of applications to be handled at staff level without being elevated to the board meetings. So while the information contained in the FAQ sheet is highly beneficial, we feel it should be tabled for further development and stakeholder input. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking from the public? I also asked my own question but did not allow any more questions. So, do my fellow board members have any questions for Tori on the policy?
policy statement.
It's just one. And that regards, under your group 2 guidelines, it stipulates that wood siding could be replaced with cementitious siding of a similar size, exposure, and profile, which in theory I'm totally on board with, but I know the question will arise regarding what you mean by similar size, exposure, and profile. Because, RV plank is different from wood, and the thicker stuff is harder to get and more expensive. So I'm just curious if you wanted to specify that, or if you were just leaving it kind of open.
No, I realize that's a challenge right now. I don't know that that's a challenge forever, and I'm talking about the thickness right now. But we all know that's a challenge right now, but we have held consistently on that in most applications. If you do want to add on that, feel free to, but size, width, thickness, overlap, exposure, those are all the things that we're thinking of when we say profile and size and exposure. So we want it to look as similar as possible. If there's a modern day product that matches, that's what we're gonna go with. And in some areas where we are struggling, there's always the easy route to elevate it to the wood. That, I'm jumping for a second, but that's one thing that I felt to touch on is the goal of bringing all of these things that we've all struggled with into the giving them a path forward through staff. So they don't come to you. That's what this will bring a lot of clarity to. Someone can get the answers, get the clarity. They can bring their project into the permit center, walk out with an approval, and it doesn't become a big hurdle. But I realize that modern day materials aren't always going to match in every single way, and that's something that we on a case by case basis will have to look at. And if there's a big gap, we have to elevate it to the board. But I'm hoping to bring fewer of those to you.
Thank you, Tori. Okay, public comment and the applicant's presentation is closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I'll just say quickly that, in general, I think that a very good job has been done with this thus far. It has been badly needed. And I think the attempt to resolve and clarify a lot of the inaccurate information and misinformation and frankly just missing information is commendable. Because I think we all have seen homeowners and property owners come in looking for a path forward, and the way the ordinance has been written, we've had a difficult time giving them a path forward. And I think we've all been yearning for staff to be able to give an answer, yes or no, or this is how you solve something. But I will say to Laurel's point, I think the FAQ page could probably be 3 pages and needs to be closely vetted and refined without giving too much information and too many name brands. I think it is also important to let people know what those options really are. And I think the recent stories about replacing windows and absurd fees that people have paid and spent are not necessarily the accurate information that should be out there of how to repair and how to fix a house and keep it alive. So the more we can work to detail the information on that FAQ sheet, I think would be really, really helpful.
I would echo what Flynn has said. Certainly this is much needed. And I'm glad to see it underway. And I think that the basics of the policy approach are fine and commendable. I agree with Flynn in reading over the FAQs sheet. I think there's either too little or too much information. And I think if products are to be named, they certainly require more research than I can do glancing through this page. And I think that providing more information about tax credits and other resources for homeowners in these districts is excellent and much needed. as is an outreach program to inform homeowners in this district about their homes, what their categories are, and what their obligations are under city regulations.
So I agree with comments that have been made, and definitely to have a generic nature to any materials suggested for substitute use. And also, I guess a question or be it a comment that if a new material does come along, potentially either the board be debriefed on the appropriateness by staff is deemed for that material, or if there's a quandary at staff level, potentially the board could maybe review the merits of individual material. I believe that would be something that would probably be a better, benchmark of consistency. The other thing too would be, I don't know if it would be incumbent on an applicant presenting an alternate material. Potentially the methodology of installation could be a factor in that, because some of the new materials do act differently than historic materials. So if you're talking about, let's say, interlacing old and new materials together, there could potentially be issues with that. So I think it would be also not just a submittal of the material, let's call it aesthetics, but maybe also the physical characteristics of the material and maybe the installation methodology of the materials as well. It's important.
I mostly agree with all of that and just reiterate thanks to staff. I know that was difficult to pour through and filter out something that is applicable in almost every case and would really save us all so much time. I mean, I think about, we've been serving for like 8 years, and I think like a disproportionate amount of our time has been spent on the Upper Peninsula where we just didn't have a path forward to resolve things logically, but this really provides that, and I appreciate everyone's work. And I recognize that the FAQ sheet is not really part of what we're considering at the moment for approval. But personally, I don't really have any problem with there being some brand names mentioned if they're known to staff. I just think that's helpful for the applicant to have some frame of reference and not have to suddenly educate themselves on what SDL means, but thoughtfully done. But yeah, I'm excited about this. I think it will really help, not just us and staff, but the people that live in this part of town. And I appreciate the spirit of trying to accommodate those of lesser means. I think that's really important as well.
I'm in agreement with the comments of my fellow board members. I do appreciate staff and time spent on this, and it's something that's badly needed. That I'm probably the newest member on the board, and it is painful to look at a homeowner that's owned something for a long time and have to deny and some of the applications have come forward and they are replacing it with wood windows, and we have to say no because of the purview in this area without this policy statement. So I'm in agreement. I think any motion that we pass, though, should clarify we're adopting a policy statement. And I agree that I don't think we necessarily do adopt the FAQs. Those can merely be informational, but let's clarify that we're adopting a policy statement today, if that's the motion made.
Yeah, and I'll just add on the FAQ, I hope I didn't insinuate that we shouldn't have rankings on there. So in a lot of cases, homeowners don't understand that, there's a company in our state that will make True Divided Light solid wood brand new windows that are completely compatible with your old windows for probably a fraction of what you can go to a large home repair company and buy new windows for. Just that the public in a lot of cases doesn't have that information, and you buy those windows a mile from here and they're made 3 hours from here. And so being able to put that out there, I think, is incredibly helpful to homeowners. You can actually do that yourself, believe it or not. You can take your measurements, go to this local company, and they will send off and have these windows made for you. So I think allowing that to be public information is really important, actually.
Yeah,
and giving staff the avenue to advocate for that and share that information. I would like to make a motion to approve the policy statement as submitted. Just a clarification that is only the policy statement.
Motion to approve, we have a motion on the floor to approve the policy statement for historic materials demolition purview, as currently submitted. Do I have a second?
Second.
Glenn, the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
And
Glenn.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. All right. Agenda item B1 is 4 Trapman Street. Frankie, who gets an introduction overview, please. Oh, you have to go on.
Thank you. This happened very late, so I didn't get to move slides around. Shortcut didn't work to go back to the beginning, so. Okay. This item was discussed at the last meeting. So I'm sure you're all familiar. I'm not going to go into a lot of item 1.
We were all here at the last meeting, so if you wanted to skip, if the board's okay with
Okay.
that, we can go right to
The applicant's new.
yeah.
Show a video.
I got it in here.
You got it?
I think it's
Just
just
in case.
so.
Part of the materials.
Oh, it might not have linked the way
Yeah,
that
I
we
was
did it.
afraid it might not, so I went ahead and brought a copy of that. and
Yeah. I did provide it to them, so they did have
Awesome.
access to it.
Would I, is it okay if I
Yes,
give them the owner's comments? There was some question about whether the owners had tried previously to remediate the damage that has occurred over several years of flooding. I just learned in the hallway that it's probably about closer to 11 or 12 times this home's been flooded. And thank you for them bringing up the important aspect of the elevation certificate. It's 4.6 is the bottom grade floor level. So that being said, by French drains, vapor barriers, they've been told the big barrier needed to come out, new openings, and then the next person came in and said that they needed to have less openings. And so it's really been over the years a very constant struggle for them. And living through the hurricanes has been very difficult for the owners, to put it mildly. And even in times when it's not been completely flooded, you know, even a high tide will sometimes, as you saw the other day, bring enough water to the street that it's completely flooded underneath most of the time. So that being said, I'd love to have any other questions you might have for me. I think that we've demonstrated that it's flooded enough times, along with the fact that I do have the owners here that are happy to concur, and 55 pages of the proof of loss in both cases. Think there's anything else I've forgotten or need to have? Okay. Well,
Do board
I'm gonna-
members? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
please, no.
I was gonna ask if anyone had any questions for you. Everything, so thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Do we have any public comment?
Madam Chairman, good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Frances Cantwell. In full disclosure, I'm a lawyer, but I am not appearing here as a lawyer. I'm appearing here as a friend of the Sullivan family that I've known for many, many years. And I've spent many, many times, many, many good times at this home at Fort Trapman. I know that a demolition is tough because you don't want to go down a slippery slope and all like that, but I support this request just in light of what's occurred over the last few years. The structure is old. It's not all that old, but you know, its age qualifies it to be within your purview. But frankly, and no offense to anybody in the room, it's not all that historically significant or architecturally significant. It sits very low. Repeated remedial effects hasn't done anything. And so the alternative, if the house is going to stay where it is, to raise it or AISE or lift it, I'm not sure if that would be any better for the neighborhood or the district. It seems to me that it would stick out even more. And so maybe perhaps in this instance, where you have a history of flooding, you have a low elevation that you can't do anything about, you have remedial efforts that have failed, and you also have, I might want to add, Trumbo Street, which dead ends into the yard. And if you stand at Rutledge and Trumbo and look down Trumbo, you literally look down because it's not a straight, it's got an incline to it. So not only do they get rising waters in the yard and in the house from time to time, but it has a little bit of action or going with it because of the incline of Trumbo Street. And I think that's a geographically or significant thing to keep in mind. So I support the application. I know that this is something that the board carefully scrutinizes, and you should. But in this instance, I think perhaps the better option would be for the house to come down and in its place, a more handsome structure erected that this board will have say in what it looks like and where it's located and its height and its scale and all of those things. And that would be better in keeping with the spirit of the BAR and certainly more in keeping with the ambiance of this neighborhood. So I would respectfully request that you approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cantwell. Do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
My name is Mimi Sullivan, and my husband is one of the original Sullivan family members. I have helped Mary Ann to redo this home when Hugo hit, 2015 and 2016 and 2017, all 3 of those years, and we had major construction projects going on. In 2016, we repaired or replaced 54 joists underneath the house. We replaced all the subflooring. The subflooring today is all rotted through, and many of the floor joists again need to be repaired or replaced. The moisture levels are so high underneath this house, and it's so low that we are having difficulty accommodating the termite company with trying to get the moisture levels down. We've probably put at least 4 moisture barriers in there. We've considered pumps, but there's nowhere to pump to because it's so flat that you can't get it out. When there's a high tide or there's a heavy rain or this last hurricane that came by, the water is up to the first or second step in the front, and it is underneath the house. So just based on the damage that we saw in 15, 16, and 17, we know that that house is getting water underneath and in the crawl space, even when it hasn't gotten into the house. And in 2015, we've replaced the ductwork now 2 times, once in 2015, again in 16. We went to mini splits in 17. We replaced all the wiring, because of course all the wiring got flooded. So we have really tried to be very thorough, thinking that this time we would fix it and that would solve the problem. And it has just not been the case.
I really encourage y'all to please allow us to have a more historically appropriate type building, built on that lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Is there anyone else speaking from the public? All right. Frankie, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Just staff wanted to point out some observations. There was a site visit conducted for the last meeting on 10/13. Her documents provided, the finished floor elevation is 7.5 feet and the property is in A11. And this was just from the staff's last comments that there are floodproofing options. However, we think that elevating the house would ruin the architectural character and form, and therefore staff is recommending approval.
Thank you, Frank. Ms. Evans, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the staff comments and recommendations? You don't necessarily need to.
Okay, no.
It was the recommendation.
If
was for
if they said approval, we're. Thank you.
Public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I'll quickly say thank you for bringing back more information. I think the site visit we made a couple weeks ago, all you had to do was look next door at the property on Michaud that's being raised way up in the air. A more historic home that I think has been through FEMA and tax credit process and so forth. That to me is what sort of brought the question about where are we elevation wise, because what we now see with this information is you would have to add probably just over 6.5 feet of a new foundation below the existing house. And at that point, I agree with staff that I think architecturally this then turns into a different home. And we see the photos, we see the video, and you know, I think the reason the house is deceptively in good condition is because it has been loved and taken care of. And the owners have reacted every time there has been a major flood, but I feel like you can't keep doing that forever. And unfortunately, I think I'm in favor of moving forward with this just because of the fact that the house is no longer what it is if you create a whole new level underneath it in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate the applicant bringing the elevation certificate, that's helpful. And because I'm an elevation certificate nerd, I guess I'll just clarify that it's an older one and the differential there was 6.5 feet, but I think the new elevation situation would make it a differential of 5.5 feet. That said, I'm comfortable with the demolition of this house, and it's not because of the flooding photographs or just because the house would need to be elevated. It's along the lines of what Ms. Cantwell mentioned, is the unique conditions and situations that we're considering in this particular case. The age of the house, the relationship of the house to its context, and the technical and aesthetic implications of elevating this particular structure. Because were it not for that, you know, all the neighboring houses that show up in your photographs would also be asking for the same thing, and they're different cases. But yeah, I'm comfortable with allowing this demolition.
I would agree with what's been said. I certainly have not disagreed with the recommendations that have been made. I think it's important to note, as Julia did, that this is a very unique situation. This house qualifies by, I'm here 8 years, as being historic, and even though it is a very nice example of its period and its architecture, which makes this decision, I think, a little more difficult, it is somewhat out of context. It is only eligible by 8 years. Elevating it would probably significantly reduce the value of its architecture. And so, because it is I think it's important to understand it, this is a very unique situation and not at all normal or a precedent in any way that I would agree that approval is the appropriate course.
I really have nothing to add. I'm in agreement, and especially stressing that my fellow board member Fillmore's point that this is by no means a precedent. it's a very particular situation.
I'll make a motion for approval of demolition with board comments acknowledging the situation with the age and condition of this particular property.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for approval of the board comment acknowledging the unique situation with this property. And we have a second by Julia. The motion to vote, Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
In favor.
Julia.
In favor.
Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Evans. Okay, agenda item number 2 is 15 Maverick Street. Frankie, when you're ready, so give us an introduction overview, please.
15 Maverick is requesting demolition of existing historic chimney. There was a site visit this morning. It is a category 3 in North Central, circa 1915. Historic materials demolition purview. I'll let things quiet down. Okay, so this is the property's location on Maverick Street. Existing site photos. Some context of Maverick. And Sanborn map showing the history of this property. And I will turn it over to the applicant. Is the applicant here?
Our typical practice when the applicant's not here, just in the event that we denied this application, the applicant did not have a chance to respond. So I'm making a motion to defer.
Madam Chairman, do we defer it to the end of this meeting or to a future meeting?
Well, we can defer to the end of the meeting and I'll raise it again. Do I have a motion to defer? Well, I'll make a motion to defer to the end of the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Motion passes. All right, we'll move to agenda item number 3, which is 156 and 158 Gordon Street.
Okay, 156 and 158 Gordon is requesting demolition of windows and front porch. This property was not surveyed in Wagner Terrace circa 1969 in the historic materials demolition purview. This is the property's location on Gordon Street. Some existing site photos. Context of Gordon. And Sanborn map showing it was not there. And we will turn it over to the applicant.
My name is Alex Hoppel, Architecture Plus. If you want to go ahead to the page that has all of the photography on it. Actually, we'll just start with the elevations. This is an existing duplex rental unit built in 1969. The owners recently purchased it and are looking to heavily reinvigorate the property by interior and exterior remodel. The interior, all the finishes will be done, but for this meeting, we're just looking at the purview of the exterior windows as well as the demolition of the front porch and the side carport. So the top photo being existing elevation, bottom being proposed. We would like to demolish the left carport. Right now it is just some HVAC units and storage. The previous tenants were college age for several years, and they are looking to now upgrade the residence to be more of an upscale rental property in the future. If you want to keep going through the elevations, so it's front, right side elevation, be adding a low rear deck underneath the 36-inch threshold for the lot coverage. All of the windows will be remaining within the rough openings as existing. We'd rather not alter the brick veneer on the project, other than repainting it in white, which is already painted as well. So rear, the unit on the right would take up the deck on the left side unit, which is kind of backwards, actually wraps around on the interior. It takes up the full rear of the ground first floor. And that was the left side, so demolition of that side carport and overhang. Yes, these are all the existing photos. We don't believe the windows to be original, but we've cited all of them and looking for any dates or company names. We found were American Glass. A lot of the windows are deteriorating due to potential break-ins. We've already had one theft attempt during this construction process. And a lot of the mullions and frames are starting to crack or fall in on themselves. Some of them are being held together by duct tape. So we would just be looking to replace with either impact if it's required or just the DB50 vinyl windows if approved and painted black again. That's pretty much all I have.
Is the demolition of the side carport, is that part of the application as well? Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
The existing windows, are they double?
No, they're casements.
They're casements.
Yeah, single pane casements.
I looked at the drawings. I don't know what you-
No wood construction?
They're metal and vinyl at the moment. No wood.
Awning or casement?
Huh?
Are they awning windows or casement?
They're both. On the right side, there's casements. On the front, it's awnings.
It's awnings.
Yeah.
Your plan would be to replace them with, just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
With double hungs, awnings.
Double hungs on the right side. If you go to the right elevation, we have double hungs, but the rest would be casements or picture units if available. And that's just due to trying to remain within our rough opening sizes.
Just my curiosity, because we actually don't have purview over.
Yeah, there was a lot of ambiguity as to what the purview would fall under, which I guess kind of had to do with agenda item 1. but-
Just as a clarification, we
Sure.
don't, and even with passing the policy today, it still needs to go to the next meeting
Gotcha.
to have our meeting minutes approved. And but just to clarify for today, that we don't have any purview over what you're putting in its place. It's
Okay.
just what you're taking away.
Gotcha.
Well, that considered, would you consider using a material besides vinyl, like fiberglass or metal clad?
We would consider it. We're proposing vinyl just based on budget reasons for the client as an investment property. But if that were a requirement that we would have to use different material, then we would have to source that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Hoppel.
Yep, thank you.
Do we have any public comment?
Christopher Morgan, I'm a neighbor of this property around the corner, and I saw it in the agenda package, and I know you all don't have purview over the replacement windows, but when you look at the house, and I don't know if we can scroll to the front facade versus in pictures versus that's kind of what it's like now at the top, and then at the bottom, to me, just having the full piece of glass windows, full, and I don't know the correct term, is just way inappropriate for our neighborhood. And that combined with the removal of the porch roof, I think really changes the character of the house and takes away a nice character defining element of it. There's some other site things they're doing I know that you all don't have purview over that are also very detrimental to the neighborhood, such as perpendicular parking heading into the site from the street as opposed to traditional driveways, which it has on the side. So I think they're doing a lot of things here that are out of character with the neighborhood, but I understand your purview limitations, so I would think under that standard, to keep the existing windows would still be more in keeping with the current neighborhood look than the new windows that are shown in the package.
Thank you, Christopher. Anyone else speaking for the public? All right. Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay, staff does observations that the porch is a character defining feature and should be retained. And staff was under the impression that the windows had been changed, and if that was the case, our opinion was that the openings should not be changed from the original proportions. But if the windows are not original to the house, they might not be under board purview, the windows themselves. Staff recommendation is 4 to 9. Sorry.
Thank you.
Less than well.
Mr. Hopple, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
We were just, our design was kind of a character inflection based on the fact that being is not in the purview, we thought we could take some creative liberty to refreshen the design of the home, bring it up to more of a high level renter standard, as opposed to some of the SDL styles that are currently existing on the project. And in regards to the front porch, actually, we had a conversation today with the owner who may be looking to retain the porch as opposed to aluminum awnings just due to lead times and availability.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yeah, quick question. Staff, Frankie, did you have a commentary about the carport?
We hadn't discussed it very much. We weren't sure if it was original to the house or not. And since this is right at the edge of our timeline, if it was not original to the house, it would not be under our purview.
So we don't know if the windows are original or not.
I mean, having looked at them somewhat carefully today, the windows are a mixture of different time periods, and that's where I think, you know, kind of gets back to the first item we went over. We need the ability to say yes and no to things, and I'm opposed to changing the openings within the building. I, for one, am not opposed to actually changing the windows themselves because they're not all the same. It's clear. I mean, I'm wondering if some of those aluminum ones may be original. I mean, it could be, but if they are, they're not good windows. They're not like some of, you know, there are a few houses in this neighborhood not far from here that have really beautiful steel windows. I mean, these aren't steel windows. They're aluminum. And so, with an appropriate replacement, I would be on board with, you know, voting to replace the windows themselves in the openings that are there, and then front porch roof. I think the form of it is character defining to the building because it seems to mimic the form of the upper roof. But I would be completely on board with replacing or rethinking I think they're aluminum or iron
Material.
somewhat. The posts do not appear to be special, you know, with regard to creating a movement for this house.
Lynn and Frankie, you're both saying that you would be opposed to any changes, no matter, I mean, it doesn't look like the front elevation windows are being changed, but you're saying the sides and the rear, you don't think should be changed? Looks like only the rear and the elevation.
Mr. Hopple, can you clarify? Are you talking about are you proposing to change the dimensions of any of the window openings?
No, not change any. There's a couple, like the rear slider door would be new. That's just due to reprogramming of the interior kitchen to the deck access. But as far as any of the windows that are existing that need to be replaced or are going to be replaced, they would just remain as the existing front openings.
And I guess there are a couple that you're just deleting or filling in, it
We're-
looks like, on the
Yeah,
west
we're working
side.
on like a feasibility study for potential third additional unit down the road. So we would be eliminating some windows that would be taking up our walls in the future.
Rear elevation.
That one's fibro.
There's no change. I don't know if that's visible from the public anywhere, maybe it is from
think if the front visible openings are remaining. That's what I'm.
We're sort of in that weird place that we've been so many times over the last 7 years that we're sort of comfortable with the notion of replacing these, but we don't. But that maybe.
Yes.
I mean, I think Lynn's completely correct. I think most of the windows have been replaced. This is, again, sort of one of those right on the cusp of that they were replaced, 15 years ago. They're not
So
under our
then it
purview.
wouldn't be
I appreciate the fact that there's no intention to change the opening size except on the rear, which is certainly not very visible, if visible at all. And so I think, if we don't have, there may be a couple of original aluminum windows in there, but, I think we probably just don't have purview over the windows.
Yeah.
So, changing them. I'm inclined to think the front porch goes with the building. And the new front porch, that while certainly attractive in an appropriate context, to my eyes is a little out of context with the nature and the period of this building. So I'm really not in favor, I think, of the demolition of the front porch, but I have no issue with the back of the building. I think we don't have a review of the windows.
Or did you get a look at the carport sorting? I didn't focus on that.
It was hard to really see it because there were so many construction people over there.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why.
My instinct is it's may well be original to the building.
Yeah, probably.
I don't think it's
Right.
necessarily character defining.
If I didn't notice it, then perhaps it's necessary. It's not character.
There are a couple of things in front of it,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to lose sleep over the carport, to be perfectly honest. I think the form of the building is the rectangular cube that you're looking at from the public right of way.
And the shape of the windows, and I agree with the porch is character defining. Other than that.
So,
Floated motion, you wanna do it?
can I float a pre-motion?
Wait, I just wanted to acknowledge that, that Mr. Morgan made a couple of good points that I don't know that we have any purview to implement, but I think it'd be great if the applicants, considered maybe not having a parking area right in the front yard and, maybe reconsidering dividing the lights, dividing the glazing at the front, I think he had some thoughtful suggestions. But that's all. Good.
Yep. On that note too, maybe a thoughtful suggestion is that even though we might not have purview over the windows, that it's part of the new policy statement that vinyl windows would not be approved at the staff level. So just something to think about with the vinyl windows, that part of the new policy makes clear that those wouldn't be approved, even though that's not part of our purview right now. Other than that, did you want to make a motion?
I was gonna make a motion for removal of the window units, but retention of the masonry opening sizes, removal of the carport, and denial of removal of the front porch.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor for approval of removal of the windows, but maintenance of the window sizes,
Retaining the masonry opening sizes,
retaining the masonry of it.
We don't have purview over the rear.
yeah, just fitting windows. It's not the purview, just
Well-
as applied.
Well, the question is whether we're in favor of them moving the door location at the rear and opening a new sliding door.
So your motion wouldn't work as to that rear.
Or the left.
I guess I would ask what staff's clarification, is that in the public purview? Is that in our purview
Oh,
from the
staff
right of way?
could not find a viewpoint where that was visible.
We're changing the left as well, the west.
Yes.
I think all they're asking for is to remove windows. All we can review is, right, removal of the windows, removal of the front porch, removal of the carport. Is that correct? So I'm saying motion for approval of removal of the windows, but replacement of the masonry opening sizes, removal of the carport, and denial of removal of the front porch.
Alright. We have a motion on the floor for approval of removal of the windows, but they've got to maintain the masonry opening sizes. Approval of removal of the carport and denial of removal of the front porch. Interesting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Delmar. Motion to vote. Glenn? Julia?
I'm just abstaining because I'm not real clear on the motion. I'm just gonna abstain.
What's unclear?
I mean, they're proposing some changes to the windows on the side, but I don't, and the rear, I don't think it's appropriate.
Bill's motion does, to the extent things are in our purview, they have to maintain the masonry opening sizes. So,
I'll vote opposed as well.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes to the majority and the motion passes 3-4 and 2 against. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? Just because it got left a little confused. So does the rear rough openings of the doors not fall under purview, but still within your approval?
So if the staff was unable to find anywhere that it was visible from public right of way,
Right.
then it's not within our purview.
Understood. Thank you.
But anything that is visible from public right of way, even if that's either from across the marsh, which it sounds like there was nothing visible, but anything visible from the public right of way, you need to maintain those masonry opening sizes.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 4, 119 and 121 Broad Street has been deferred by staff. So we are on agenda item number 5, 235 Meeting Street. Frankie, when you're ready, if you'll give us an introduction overview, please.
Agenda item 5, 235 Meeting Street is requesting conceptual approval for storefront alterations. Move entrance from the central bay to the left bay at the storefront. Install lights at entry, decorative screens between the front bays. It is a category 3, pre-1884 in the old and historic districts. Here is the location on the corner of Meeting and Hazel. Existing site photos. Some context of Meeting Street. And the Sanborn map showing the history of the structure. And turn it over to the applicants.
Thank you, Neil Stevenson. You've seen this before. Last time we presented this, I think that there was some clarity issues of what the scope of work is. And so we've just added that to the drawings. I hope that it's a little clearer, kind of section to the storefront. But basically, there were some questions. You wanted to make sure that there were no structural work done to the storefront. And so we are not doing any structural work. We're not altering the tin cornice over the entry either. We're really just moving the existing central entrance to the left bay. There's 3 bays, the bay on the left. And we show some historical photos where, this building's been severely altered over the years, but you can see in the top right photo here that the top left, the left side was once used as an entrance into the building. So we're proposing to just move the entrance to the left side and then just basically infill the central, which is now the doorway bay, to match the other bays without doing any structural work. We're just filling it in, making it look like the other bays, and then painting and repairing this. So there's some of that tends to be worked on, but for the most part, it's actual repair in kind.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Can we go to the elevations that Mr. Stevenson was referring to, just as, just want to make sure. And then that new drawing that you provided, since you drew it, I want to see it.
Oh yeah.
Let's
Oh,
talk
this
about
one here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Then yes, it doesn't show up on it well, but so you can see. Oh, also I think there was a question about the screen. We've got this screening over the storefront, and that is completely detachable. You can see in the section that it is just secured from between column to column, and it's totally removable. So nothing that would be permanent. Same with the steerhead, which is a cast aluminum steer. It's actually a cast from an actual steerhead, which would also be removable. And then next time this changes hands. But it seems that the storefronts in Charleston of this nature, which have been altered many times, are transitory. As long as we're not doing major structural issue work, which we're not. It's more cosmetic, and it could be easily restored later on.
The vertical pillars of the storefront, I think based on your 1970 photograph, are not original, right? It was just a clear span at that point?
Yeah, the storefront has been greatly altered. I suspect that probably could remove all those pillars if you wanted to structurally.
And you're not changing that?
We're not
just
changing
that. Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Thank the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society remains concerned there is still no notes or details on these drawings that convey what materials are existing and proposed, and exactly what the alterations will be. In order for the BAR to assess this project's viability, the changes being made should be clear in the application. We also continue to struggle with the dark, heavy nature of the storefront and encourage continued study. Thank you.
April Woods for Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for conceptual approval for the storefront alterations at 25 Union Street. Concerns about the proposed architectural details for the storefront, including the arches within the windows, the steerhead, and the light fixtures. Although it's helpful that these features are reversible, we believe these features need refinement to reflect the building's prominent location within the historic district. We recommend deferral so these details can be developed further. Thanks.
Any other public comment? All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay, staff had observation, the model on detail sheet A0.4 doesn't match the other drawings. The location of the sign band is different. So the drawing would need to be changed, either that sheet removed or changed to match before permitting. We had a few comments from the previous meeting that the proposed lighting was inappropriate for the location. I don't know if we had a change or a new lighting schematic provided. I couldn't find one. And then again, the signage band, the location differs between the elevations and the model. And Mr. Stevenson already mentioned that the screening details will be reversible, so I can strike comment number 3. Staff was recommending deferral with comment.
Thank you, Frankie. Neil, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments, recommendations, or public comment?
Yes, in the, as far as materials go, we have in return to replace in kind, which, I mean, we're not introducing anything like vastly new, except for the things that are detachable, like the screen, and which is kind of a mark for this company. I don't think that it's unattractive. It's just, it's just something that this business uses in their marketing, and it's to create an aesthetic appeal to show people what they're doing inside. I mean, the fact that it's removable, I think that should be allowed, right? And then, but really, like, as far as the storefront goes, we're just saying replace in kind. We're using the same exact materials throughout, and so I mean, that's basically it. I don't know why there would be an issue with some of the other things, but we can. I was hoping that we could maybe go have the lighting approved as staff, because they haven't really picked out exactly what lighting they want. They just know that they want some lighting there. So thank you.
All right, public comment on the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Say, one thing, frankly, I don't know if the staff would necessarily drop comment number 3. I just think that it's definitely parts that are still applicable, especially mentioning that it should be reversible and not damage the structure. I think that's viable.
Would you like it to be a note there, to remain and have it included as a note?
Yeah, I think it's good to have it. It's an important, has some important statement in it. I think there is probably still some information that needs to be clarified, and now to what appears to be primarily sort of, call it, for lack of a better word, branding details. I guess it's appropriate with that steer up there, maybe branding details. But because of nature, it appears to be reversible. I guess I think if that can be detailed and provided to staff in a way that meets their satisfaction, that it is a fully reversible system, I don't really have a problem with it. I do think the lack of information still does warrant a deferral, but in my mind, I'd be willing to support a deferral with final review by staff.
I would agree with that. I think what's being requested is pretty simple, but I think staff has the point that the drawings are sort of hard to interpret in some ways, and so it's frightening because we're not sure exactly what's being requested. But if I understand correctly, it seems fairly minor and shouldn't be very controversial. So I would be in agreement with Bill that it can be a deferral to final review by staff.
I agree. I think we're just missing some fine detail and labeling, and I think A0.4 kind of goes down a slippery slope because you're misrepresenting the elevations of the building with eliminated details. So in part, one could look back on an unlabeled drawing and say, well, I showed a drawing with all the details stripped off the building, and you approved the drawing. So I think these drawings and renderings need to be reflective of what is there today, not a watered down version of that. And then just little things like up on the 3rd floor, the north arch has that, I don't think it's an earthquake bolt, I think it's sort of a medallion because there used to be one in the south arch. now seems like the right moment to replace the missing one and things like that just aren't, if you're doing a full exterior refresh, I think there are a few little details that should be added and considered to make it thorough.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's maybe the point that I believe the Preservation Society was raising about the clarity of the drawings. To the degree that definitely should be boldly noted that materials that are going to be remain in deference to new materials. That's a good point, Glenn. Yeah, I think I'm comfortable making a motion, if that's okay, for deferral with staff comments and staff's note, formally comment number 3, and final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral with staff comments 1 and 2, and now staff note, which was formerly staff comment number 3, and final review by staff. Do I have a second? Glenn? The motion to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
In favor.
Chair votes majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Neil. Next is agenda item number 6, 250 Rutledge Avenue. Frankie, if you'll provide an introduction and overview, please.
Uh, 250 Rutledge is requesting after-the-fact approval for alterations to previously approved plans, including changes to stairs, bump out on east exterior, deck railing, fenestration, garage door, and siding. It is a Category 4 in County Borough, Elliott Borough, circa 1895 in the Old and Historic District. The structure's location. Existing site. Got a historic image. Board maps showing the location of the history of the property. Turn it over to the applicant.
I'm Mark Hederman. I'm here representing my son Scott, who's out of the country. I'm not a professional. I've got a lifetime avocation of building projects, much to my wife's chagrin. So it's right that I'm here because the decisions that were made around these issues that were brought forward were mine. And I'll apologize to say that there's naivete there and not recognizing perhaps that the issues should have been brought forward. They weren't, so they are now. I'll take let me talk briefly to each individual item that the inspector brought up, and then if you all have any questions or whatever. The staircase to begin with, as you see the picture there, was designed initially to make a 90-degree turn as it came down to end up on the side porch of the existing structure. That required the removal of 2 HVAC units that you see there, and their at least proposed location to be between the 2 buildings. That went against HVAC, the HVAC guidance that I received for relocating of those units. And there were elevation concerns in that 90-degree turn onto that staircase. So we checked code and we made the decision to bring the stairway down straight. And that's how we ended up with that. As you look at the front of the building, I think at issue also are I'll call them eyebrows. There's one extending off the bottom of the deck there, and one that sits right over top of the garage. And those were put there because as we built to specs, we saw water draining down off the deck and down the front wall, splashing back into the garage. So we designed the eyebrows to bring the water out away from the building. The railing was another concern, but I'm not sure the specifics of the concern because we hadn't got to the point of building the railing yet. So we tried to do what we could in the updated plans to be more specific about what that would look like and what it entailed. You can see off the left side of the picture the eyebrow, the blister, if you will, the bump out that came off the living room that actually will contain the gas fireplace that will sit in the living room. That was not on the original plans. There was an issue with siding. We attempted, the first plans came out and it turned out that in two different places on the plans that were approved, one specified hardy plank or cement siding, the other specified wood. We called early on in the project numerous times, tried to make numerous contacts, only finally to be told our request was to use hardy plank. We were finally told that hardy plank was unacceptable and that we would use wood siding. It turned out that we were written up for using the wood siding on a stop work order. I think that's about all I can. There's a comment in there about roof line, and we've tried our best to figure out what that was about. As far as we can see, we built it to specs. Other than those functional add-ons that we talked about that I addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Hederman. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Describe the windows that have been installed.
Yes, they. I think there was a write-up that said that mentioned the muffins were interior as opposed to exterior. When we went out for windows, certainly no excuse, but the ones we initially looked at were 5 months out on the supply chain. So we basically committed to these windows, which I didn't recognize the difference at the time. The concern I understand is the interior nature of the muffins as opposed to the exterior.
Any questions?
We also updated, we were requested to update the plans, and we did that. And we had a couple days to do it under trying to get the labor together, the professionals together to get it done. We did our best. We got a lot of it done. There's some pieces there that I'd like to see, updated, but they're not significant to the issues that we discussed.
Any other questions?
Staff, but not of that.
So, so the question about the roof line, I'm sure was probably that deck system. So are you where that framing is shown right there? Are you going to be establishing this parapet wall that was drawn?
I'm sorry.
Are you going to be establishing the parapet wall that was drawn on the plans? Or is that supposed to be an open rail up there?
No, there will be a wall.
There is going to be a wall.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
A neat
You
wall.
had mentioned the extension of the cornice over the windows because of the splashing. If there's a parapet wall there, was that splashing off of that roof level, or I'm trying to understand the extension of this cornice.
Right there. That's coming off the deck. Now, when we put up the wall, we've got 6x6s there that will support it and will frame it out with the siding, the wood siding that's consistent with the house, and leave a drainage space underneath for the water to come off the deck.
So I guess we're to assume previously the parapet system was drawn with an internal drainage system.
There was no internal, that's what, we didn't have that detail. So, and there's actually no way to internally drain it. As it stands right now.
Thank
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you, Mr. Hederman. Glenn, did you want to ask a question of staff?
Bill kind of started to get there. I'm just a little confused about that roof deck with what has now become an eave line rail that water will come from underneath. It completely changes that face of the building that we approved. And then I didn't notice the upper, it looks like the upper window door in what's been built is different also in layout from the elevations on the drawings. I guess, reality is, maybe I'm being lazy, but there are 70 pages of these drawings to flip through, and I'm losing myself between what we originally approved and was permitted and where we are currently.
That doorway has not been framed out completely.
We'll move into public comment. Do we have anyone speaking for the public?
April Wood, Start Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for after the fact approval to the previously approved plans of 250 Rutledge Avenue. We are concerned that the project has deviated so much from the drawings that were approved by this board a few months ago. These build changes accumulate to a different project design. If there are problems, the applicant should have been in immediate communication with the BAR staff to resolve their issues rather than pushing ahead with their project. We recommend denial of this application.
April?
Laurel Fair, the Preservation Society of Charleston. Unfortunately, we feel these unapproved changes further diminish what was already a challenged design. Looking back at the approved plans from April 2021, the changes are clearly a downgrade in the design and would not have been initially approved by the BAR, including the railings, stair, window and door placement, size, and material quality. We are not supportive of the unapproved changes and urge the board to deny the after the fact request. The contractor should work closely with staff to ensure that inappropriate modifications are reversed and the design is constructed as originally approved. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking for the public? All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
So these are some photos taken by our inspector when he did his stop work order, just showing the differences. The straight staircase, the different windows, and the little bump out on the rear. Called it a blister in his notes. And then these are stops for these. Initially, there were the notes from the inspection. The stairs were not built according to the plan. The little blister for the fireplace was not approved. Eve material was not to plans. Roof line at loft deck, not to plans. No deck railing as built. We understand that's under construction now. The windows lacking exterior muntins. Trim not to plans. No garage door and the siding material. Though I have found the old plans and there is some confusion in those. Staff comments are, we are recommending to change the stair. The change in the stair creates an awkward condition where you have two stairs running together. We're recommending that be restudied to resolve that issue. The little blister for the fireplace should be removed to match the approved drawings. Windows to be changed to match approved drawings. Garage door constructed and installed per plans. And drawings updated to show as-built conditions and these changes with these comments. Staff recommendation is denial of after the fact with staff comments.
Thank you, Frankie. Mr. Hederman, did you respond to anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
The
Could you come
siding
to the
is-
microphone so we can hear?
The siding we discussed before, that was, an issue that we were directed to.
And sir, staff was not recommending that you change the siding.
Okay.
We just included that as a note so that they knew what the inspector had told you.
Thank you. I would request that we go back and we look at the plans as we've morphed them and re-presented to you. Aesthetically, I don't see major issues. That's our opinion. If I had seen major issues, I would have brought it forward. Functionally, they were all improvements. That's how we got there. So with that, I'll just rest it with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hederman. Public comment on the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yeah, it's tough, and it was difficult for us to resolve this and get it approved initially, so makes it even harder. There may well be a couple of items on the list that are truly not visible to the public right of way. I don't know, maybe that would affect those, but I think there are some serious issues that do have to be corrected. I was just looking at the approved drawings, seemed to indicate that the siding was going to be shiplap, as they would. But I think you're gonna have a lot of trouble with the particular wood that's applied there. It's not primed even, on any side. It should be primed on all faces. And then again, it's different from what was approved. It's not shiplap, it's just grade of lap siding. And the windows without proper divided lights, those are never allowed downtown, not even on affordable dwellings. I just don't think they're appropriate at all. And yeah, and I feel for the applicant and really wish that they had coordinated with staff before this point, because there's a lot of retro action that needs to happen now.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, I think we all know that when this came through the process initially, it came through a couple times, if I remember, because it was asking to squeeze a lot out of a house and of a property. And concessions were made, details were developed. And I think a lot of those details that were guided helped conceal the fact that it's essentially a 3-story addition on the back of a 2-story house have now been voided, and in no way do I support leaving it how it is.
I don't have much to add. I agree with what's been said, and the window trim is completely inappropriate. The fireplace blister is not on the drawings. I'll forgo any more remarks about the siding. I just agree with Julia's remarks that the eave changes on the back theoretically to control water are, I think, inappropriate. The parapet issue / railing, I think, has to be resolved. So I agree with staff.
If we were making a motion, would it make sense to address the siding as well, or how do you? Because staff is saying that they weren't recommending that the siding be.
The drawing calls for wood chip levels. Siding, and I think that was,
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I think part of that is an art to try to differentiate from the siding on the main house, which we would, of course, generally approve.
I think the aesthetic of it is important and that it was to differentiate, but just being perfectly honest, I can't in good faith tell them they should leave it there because it's all unprimed and like a lot of this, the way it's built, I don't even know how you get to it to prime it. Like behind that stairwell that's been built, and a little bit of that's kind of not my problem, but at the same time, I don't want your building to fall apart. And I think it's a challenge. Ignoring that would do the owner a disservice in 5 years.
Well, and it's another major deviation from what was, what was approved.
What a motion, I'll make a motion for denial of after the fact, approval with staff comments.
Siding, you okay with making the siding?
That's not part of it. If we need to have a board comment as to the siding.
Well, that is an alteration to the plans, and they've noted as item I, 1I, siding material, it is different than what's on the plans.
We just didn't specify anyway. Staff didn't specify a change to that, was all. We were leaving that up to you because those of us reviewing it weren't familiar with this when it originally went through.
I see, so you're taking siding off, so we'll have to mention siding in a motion.
Staff made an observation that the siding was different. We did not instruct them on how to correct that.
I see.
Staff comments and a board comment to pertain to siding shown in the original drawings.
Yes, I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing. So when I reference staff's comments, and am I speaking to the viability of staff's observations, or?
You don't have to. You can adopt staff comments 1 through 5. So we just wanted to provide you the list as our observations of what Travis noted on his inspection.
I see,
So when your motion is just staff comments, it's just 1 through 5.
I see.
Can I throw something while Bill's saying that? Is the ridge height where it's supposed to be? The approved plans have the ridge height that's lower than the adjacent ridge height. Photos are from an angle. Yeah, I hate to be picky, but a lot of nuance went into even getting this approved. And every bit of that has been.
And a simple solution is to correct it in line with the approved drawings.
Okay, so I'll continue on. Thank you, Glenn. I'll make a motion for the after the fact conditions with staff comments and a board comment that the siding material should also be provided as approved.
And the issue with the use and parapet / railing.
Yeah. Say that, the
Siding material.
siding material, eave and or parapet detailing and railing. Provided for plans, approved plans.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for denial of the after-the-fact denial of after-the-fact with staff comments and a board comment, the siding material, the eave and or parapet detailing, and the railing should be provided as per the approved plans. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Fillmore. Put the motion to a vote. Glenn? Julia? Bill?
Yeah,
Fillmore?
In favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hederman. All right, agenda item number 7 is 12 Humphrey Court. Frankie, to give us an introduction and overview, please.
Well, Humphrey is requesting after-the-fact approval for alterations to piazza, siding, and windows. It is a Category 4 in Canterbury, Borough, circa 1890 in the Old City District. This is the location on Humphrey Court. A previously existing site photo. Existing site photo. Some context. This is from the Historic Charleston Foundation circa 1993. Sanborn map showing the history of the property. Turn it over to the applicant. Is the applicant?
Is there somebody in the hall? I think they can normally hear me out there. Is the applicant here for agenda item number 7, 12 Humphrey Court? Okay, well, I will make a motion to defer to the end to give the applicant a chance to appear, and if not, then we'll defer to the next meeting. Do I have a second? Bill? All in favor?
Aye.
Not opposed, the motion passes. We are on agenda item number 8, 37C F Street. Frankie, give us an introduction and overview, please.
7C F Street is requesting conceptual approval of new detached single-family dwelling. It is not surveyed on the west side, will be new. in the in the historic corridor district. This is the location on F Street. The previously existing site photo for the board's information, this was a triplex in this particular unit. I believe it suffered a fire. And when they came to staff, it was within 50 years, so we approved the removal of it at staff. Context. Sorry. More context of F Street. And one map. Previously. I will turn it over to the applicant.
I'm Patrick Corpus with Armin Studio. Thank you, everybody. We are proposing a new single-family, 3-bed, 3-bath home as Frank said, what used to be an attached single-family dwelling. That was burned down. A vacant brick shell. Can't really use the vacant brick shells, so we have gotten approval to demo that. We are now setting it as a detached dwelling. We're on a crawl space. We're up out of the floodplain. It's not that high, so it's about 3 feet. And then we've got 10-foot ceilings on the first floor and 8-foot ceilings on the second floor, trying to make sure we don't get too high. Most of the homes on F Street are single-story with a handful of 2-story houses. We're really trying to not go too high, but we do want to get that second story. So we're very narrow in space on the property. So the front facade is a little bit narrower than the back of the house. Trying to give a little bit more space on each side, respect the setbacks and the other property lines of the neighbors. So then as we do go back on the property, the house widens out to make use of some better space for a master suite on the second floor and living space on the first floor. What we're thinking material-wise is we have masonry foundations with stucco. We've got fiber cement siding throughout, mostly board and batten with a little bit of glass siding at the ceiling. The windows are planned as metal clad with lighted lights. Forget the size off the top of my head, but good sized windows, really trying to bring some scale and some light and dress up those sides a little bit. Railings are planned as wide railings. We do have a little bit of a porch on the back side, 2 stories. The roof is planned as a metal roof. That's about all I got.
Thank you. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Question for staff to start. Can you explain why this is under our purview?
So this is actually in the historic corridor, so we would have jurisdiction over new construction there.
And that's because it fronts 26?
Because it fronts 26, though you can't see it from 26. So this side of F Street is under our jurisdiction. Across the street is only under the historic material demolition purview. And trust me, we agonized over that when he brought the triplex to us.
I just had the same question. Did a double take. Why?
And then for the applicant, could you explain why the top plate and the eave height rise toward the rear?
It was more to give some differentiation to the facade a little bit. The original layout was becoming a very long, narrow, unbroken facade on too many planes. So it became a way to differentiate the facades from the design standpoint. So we weren't creating long, narrow, blank facades. From the front as well, I think it reads a little nicer from the street as being able to get a little bit more height in the master suite. Rear of the property, the rear of the building, that don't read much from that street to take away from the nature of the more single story homes
finished floor heights at the front are 10 and 8, but then it's greater on the
No,
second floor.
finished floor heights are the same. I thought you were talking about how the eve height steps up a little bit.
Or the finished ceiling heights, I
But
guess.
the finished ceiling height is still planned as 8 feet throughout, and it's vaulted in that. And the master suite,
The walls must be taller back there.
slightly, yes. Now west elevation, you can see how it steps up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment? Frank, you can give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The structure is very narrow due to the lot size, but we felt like the vertical siding kind of further enforces that, making the building seem taller than it is. We recommend looking at changing the siding direction to horizontal, that possibly make the building feel a little more in proportion to the streetscape. We recommend providing some detailing to the, I tried to explain this in writing, but it made no sense. So let me just point out. To this wall right here.
Which wall?
So where the rear mass projects out from the front mass, and you see this sort of blank face here. We recommend looking at maybe if a window, sorry, I got my whole plan, or something could be added. I think in the first floor, I think it was a pantry, but the second floor, there might be a place where a window could be added for some detailing. Just to break up that face. We just made a note that typically the taller portion of the structure is toward the street, not the rear. And several of the windows on the south facade felt awkwardly proportioned and placed close to a corner. And staff recommended using a previously used window size and relocating the window within the facade. That said, staff's recommendation is for conceptual approval with staff comments and a final review at staff.
The applicant want to respond to anything raised in the city staff comments and recommendations?
Overall, I don't disagree with the staff comments. The vertical siding can reinforce some more verticality of the building. We're also trying to separate it out as a new structure from a lot of the other single-story horizontal structures. And then I just have a question on number 3. It's typically the taller portion of the structure, so I'm a little confused on, is that something that the staff would like us to do, or is that just a comment?
It was a comment that we wanted to bring out before the board to see if that was something they wanted to discuss.
And the other 2 comments, I don't have comments.
Thank you. All right, the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I would say that staff's comment 3 would probably be more applicable to a more traditional lot layout scenario where the house would be forward anyway.
It was, which is why we didn't make a recommendation to do anything about it. We wanted to make a note of that fact, but
Not really set a precedent with this, but I'm intrigued by this one. So I come in, I think I rode by there the day after this burning and was kind of wondering, where do you go from here? And it looks an interesting redevelopment opportunity for something that was built as attached, but now would not be.
Yeah, I'll say that the fact that the houses across the street don't get this review, and the fact that it's not visible from 26 kind of colors the way that I consider this design. But, I think staff has some good points, and to some extent, I think it's worth imagining that you're setting a precedent for this paradigm, because the other units that didn't burn might someday be replaced in a similar fashion, because they're all sitting below base flood elevation. And, you know, I think that, to me, there is probably a more sensitive way to allow the footprint to widen in the rear without raising it what seems to be at least 2 feet, and that, you know, massive gable kind of appear not too far back from the front elevation. You know, curious what other board members think.
Yeah, I guess I would say I'm agree with you by location. It's definitely less visible project. A couple of things that I think maybe the applicant will want to spend some time on that would hopefully pay off would be, I think these porches are woefully lacking in detail. They definitely need more detail to them, both this entry porch and then obviously the back porch, which is probably not in our review. But still, it's really lacking in detail. And yeah, I agree, Julia. You know, that back massing is taller than it has to be. Obviously, it's just an extra couple of feet taller, sort of break plane, pier roof plane with this little front mass. I was debating whether if it was all at the same eave height, it would just sort of look like a gable on gable type of roof. Any worse or better? Obviously, it's an easy way to lower a good part of the appearance of this mass. Would be to just match that eave height or plate bearing height all the way back. Yeah, I guess the main thing I just would sort of encourage the applicant to do, the architect to do, would be just take a look at some of that finer detailing, the trim detailing, the porch detailing, the rail detailing, all those points. Because if you don't detail it, they're just going to be, you're going to get a fielder's choice special out here. And you're going to want to go put that thing in your portfolio and go, I'm not going to put that in my portfolio. It doesn't look right. So draw what you intend. Detail it the way you intend for it to be done. I think there's a chance of I believe what you're trying to give the impression of. But I can see enough ambiguity in what's drawn, at least right now, that you might not get the result you're hoping for. So, that's all I have.
Certainly having the smaller portion appears a little odd. I appreciate the fact that I think there is an effort here to present a more diminutive streetscape on a street that has very small structures. And I appreciate that effort. I do find increase in elevation at the rear and that gable fairly imposing. I agree with Julie on that. I'm not sure if there might be a way to ameliorate that a little bit with a little more careful design. But even though it struck me as extremely odd when I first looked at it, I do appreciate the effort to try. And that's not unusual, of course, in commercial construction, large buildings, to try to diminish the impact on that street level and push the mass to the rear. But I'm not sure if with the increase in elevation of the eave and the ridge height at the back that it quite works. Well, just
Strong feelings about the siding. large-scale mass architectural direction? Do you feel like that's?
Sure, it was just that roof issue. That was the only thing there. I mean, how viable do you think the solution would be to just carry the same plate height all the way through? I mean, it's a gable on gable, but.
I think that would be fine. At that point, I guess you would, just lower the back one so that the ridge is still higher, but not as much
It would be one sort of continuous, obviously,
on the other side. Right now, and we'll add
facial line.
drag that way because it's dead.
That would probably be enough. I appreciate the effort to, again, like Fillmore, like you said, to make it more diminutive out of the street. I appreciate that effort. So I think that would be enough for me if it to sort of carry the plate height all the way through.
Okay. Not concerned about having that wall that projects to the south, especially if all that gets lowered a little bit.
Yeah, if that porch is detailed really well,
Right.
gets pulled off there.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is conceptual. I'll make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments. That's 1, 3, 4. And a board comment to maintain the eave height and the top plate height of the front mass throughout the structure. Final review by staff.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments 1, 3, and 4. And then a board comment to maintain the eave height and the top plate height of the front mass throughout the structure. Do I have a second to Julia's motion?
Second.
Bill, a motion to vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
Yeah.
Julia,
And
Bill.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 9 is 17 Thomas Street. Frankie, will give us an introduction and overview, please, when you are ready.
Okay, 17 Thomas Street is requesting demolition of deck and conceptual approval of new addition. It is a category 3 in Radcliffe Borough, circa 1830 in the Old and Historic District. This is the location on Thomas Street. Existing site photos. Context of Thomas. And some Sanborn showing the history of the structure. Very Julia. Do you want me to go back? And I will turn it over to the applicant.
My name's Tom Dion, the owner of the property. Actually, my wife owns it. She lets me live there. We moved to Charleston. We decided to raise a family here 15 years ago. We currently have been in Mount Pleasant for the last 15 years. We really love Charleston. We want to raise our girls downtown. So we have both our girls go to school downtown, a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. We're really excited about this property. And this is a renovation for us. We're super excited about it to be able to invest in this property. We were really excited when we found it that there was a driveway to one side of the house and a courtyard on the other. So we were really excited about doing that. So I appreciate you guys work long hours. met you guys today by chance. So thank you so much for taking this time and considering this. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to the expert.
I'm Dale Marshall with Architraver, and I'm stepping in for Bill Marshall, who's in charge of our Charleston office, but is out of town today. This is a typical single house in some ways and atypical in others, in that it does have a 12-foot driveway on the north side, which is not typical. And so we've got some solutions that are typical for a single house and some solutions that are a little bit off typical, but that are appropriate, we think, for this site. Fundamentally, we want to take down an existing porch, which is clearing up some, and it's an uncovered deck, basically, that's off the back, and it's clearly not original or terribly old. And we want to take down the existing rear addition on the house, which we think was done somewhere in the 80s, is our best guess from evaluating the materials and the look. And we'd like to replace that addition with one that we think is more sympathetic, but that also opens up an entrance on the north side, because that's where the driveway for this house is, and it would be nice to be able to get into your house from the driveway without having to walk back out to the sidewalk and come up on the side porch. There are a ton of details that we're looking to do. The house has been significantly butchered over the years in terms of windows, and there originally were a whole series of what we think were narrow French doors. There were one or two of those that partially remain, and 6 or 8 of them that have been butchered in every way imaginable. The goal is to put them back so that they're all the narrow French doors opening onto the side porch. We also are making a couple of proposing a couple of window changes on the north side elevation. There are a number of windows over there, and because again, we have 12 feet of property, we're not dealing with the usual implications of looking straight into a neighbor's side porch off of them. There's no real symmetry per se on the side windows, so we're looking to add them where they seem appropriate for the house. So the plan basically is taking off, again, there is an existing room on the far left drawing. We're proposing to take that off and add back a new addition that we think is more sympathetic to the scale of the house. It also works from a functional plan standpoint. Get to the elevations so that we can. So the side porch, what you're seeing on the far left behind the chimney, is the proposed addition. Everything else is part of the original house. Currently, there are only, I think, 2 of those tall, narrow French doors that exist on the side porch. The rest of them are windows that have been chopped up in various different ways, and you can see remnants of the French doors in some of them, and fixed air conditioning units and other things. Around it, some more things than you see there. From the back, the addition is trying to stay substantially below the scale of the house so that it would be less visible from the street. From the side, and again, the addition is way down the driveway. So we don't think it's terribly visible from the street. We're trying to keep it sympathetic and low in scale, but it is an important part of the project in terms of, changing the flow of the house and creating a family entrance on that side that then connects into the remainder of the house. Rest of the, project is just a series of interior renovations, again, trying to respect stairs and room configurations and all those things, but also trying to make the house functional for modern living. We're open to, in terms of detailing on the addition, the goal would be, again, to try to make it subservient. We certainly are open to doing a different siding pattern on the addition, but something that would, be sympathetic, but have, say, a different break than the siding on the house. All the windows will be, designed to be compliant with your standard single pane wood windows with true divided lights. The goal again would be to keep everything in character with the house while also making it suitable for modern living. So I'm happy to, I think y'all walked through it this morning, but I'm happy to answer any questions or try to guide you through any of our logic behind why we're looking to do things.
Marshall. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? Thank you. All right, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the applicant meeting with us on site to walk through the proposal. We are highly supportive of restoration efforts for the primary historic house, including reopening the living piazza based on physical evidence. We are open to an expanded addition at the rear and generally feel the height and scale of the proposal is acceptable. However, some adjustments to the massing are necessary to be consistent with the architectural precedents in Charleston. While this site is unique in having extra space towards the north property line, it is traditional for Charleston buildings to have a linear pattern where additions extend in the same wall plane towards the rear of the property. We would prefer to see the addition continue in the same north side setback as the primary building, as the proposed stair bump out creates complicated, unconventional, and highly visible massing. We also feel the wide shed dormers are out of character in this context and create a voluminous roof form that exacerbates the massing. Similarly, the wide ganged windows are incompatible with the character of the property and suggest a more traditional approach to the fenestration. Finally, we feel the existing piazza infill is unfortunate and should not be expanded, so the back column and small section of balustrade can remain disengaged from the infill and continue to read as part of the open historic piazza. Due to the degree of restudy we feel is needed to this addition, and particularly on issues of massing and fenestration, we feel the project should be deferred. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else speaking for the public? All right, Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay, the placement, I just want to make observation, the placement of the existing house is unusual for Charleston. It's almost centered on the lot with the driveway on the opposite side as the piazza. And I will note that staff actually spent a good bit of time trying to see if the house had been moved, since it was so odd. Staff comments, while adding to the rear of a single house is atypical for Charleston, staff appreciate how this unusual situation is addressed to make the house usable for the occupant. And the rear bump out is a similar condition to the house next door where an addition was constructed to the side opposite the piazza. We do feel that the rear addition should be subordinate to the existing in height, scale, and mass, and recommend lowering the overall height of the addition so it doesn't visually compete with the piazza side of the structure. I will say that staff did discuss today that it looks like there's a parapet wall at that rear, which is not the actual roof line, so we didn't think that would be difficult to change the height. Materials and details should be differentiated from the historic house. Staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with staff comments and a final review by staff.
Thank you, Frankie. And I also failed to read a letter that we received from the public. So this is from Lane Decken at 20 Thomas Street. 2 members of the Board of Architectural Review Small and writing in support of the plans for the restoration and renovation of the residence at 17 Thomas Street, which is listed as item 9 on the agenda for the October 27th meeting. My husband and I have lived directly across from that residence in our house at 20 Thomas Street for nearly 10 years. During that time, we have seen the house suffer from benign neglect and misguided decorative efforts. We were delighted to meet the new homeowners and hear about their plans to restore the house and return it to a livable single-family home. I have studied the plans, and the only facet I noticed, which would be visible from the street, was the approximate 6-foot bump out to the kitchen area at the end of the rather long parking/drive area. My understanding is it will greatly increase the livability of the house. It is in fact very similar to what was done at 15 Thomas Street 2 years ago. That addition, which is much closer to street view, blends in perfectly with the original structure. I believe that would be the case here. I hope the committee approves the plans as presented. So we've heard from the public, and Frankie, did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comments or the city staff comments and recommendations?
No, other than to emphasize that the addition and bump out is a long way back. So we feel like it really will not change the general streetscape, that it is sympathetic with the neighbors. Similar addition. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
To remind myself what we had reviewed for 15 Thomas and remember that. And I guess the difference sort of is that it's a corner lot, so that's effectively the rear of their house. I think it's a beautiful house. Congratulations, and I think a lot of what is being proposed is really positive and clearly welcomed by many parties. And I recognize the challenge of access and completely understand why you'd want to have a rear addition on the driveway side. And that personally, I would be comfortable if there were some sort of porch element, something minor protruding on that north side. And I'm having trouble wrapping my head around major incursion, if you will, to the north, and especially maybe the fact that it's sort of trying to appear original or historic. You know, the parapet in front of that kind of more suburban volume beyond. So yeah, I'm having a little trouble with the specific solution to the access, but I completely support the notion of gaining access on that north side. Staff didn't mention the expansion of Piazza infill. I don't know that I have a real strong feeling about it, but I just was curious.
I think we were more focused on the rear bump out and just didn't have as strong feelings on the expansion of the infill.
The infill expansion.
Second floor, like the
It's the
master
second
bath.
floor in the master.
It's making it. Is it 2 feet larger? I mean, I'm just trying to tell what.
Yeah, can I ask her?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's making it be 2.5 feet large. It's still still staying behind the rail. It's kind of a no man's space, and we were just trying to make it a little less likely that you would try to skinny your way through there and to gain a little more space on the interior. From an elevation standpoint, it looks exactly the same, but it does pull it a little closer to the rail. It's already useless space, so we were trying to get more useful space inside.
Yeah.
It's a minor point, but demolition of that back porch area. That was one thing today. I think it was.
Is it old
Actually,
enough
I
for
don't.
us?
It looked like it was maybe built in the
Yeah.
1990s.
You can't see it from the street because of the giant post board or something. I think if that weren't there, you could see the corner of it, but
I think we need to include it in
there's
the
nothing.
motion now.
Yeah.
Okay,
That one, I think.
no problem.
I do think that point that you just raised, and I think Preservation Society raised it as well about that expansion of that little element out on the piazza. I think that wall should stay where it is, because it is just furthering that closing down for a couple more feet of a giant wet room. There's plenty of room out there, in my opinion. And I think in a way the parapet is an interesting solution to sort of mask what is, I think the word suburban was used or something like that, roof form. I think that is the case here. It is maybe the thought of, and I get it, you need the dormer there to get the stair to come up. I get that. I don't know if there's any potential more minimizing of that form that's possible, of the dormer form. The way the dormers are detailed contributes to the sort of suburban comment. And I believe that massing maybe could be creatively used in some form or fashion. I was kind of wondering if you could do something to the effect of maybe the primary roof lines reflective of the width of the existing extension now, and then maybe what happens maybe behind that parapet wall is sort of built off of that. That might be something that's a potential idea. definitely getting rid of that contemporary deck is not an issue for me. So I think it's really a couple of minor points, well, maybe major points. Addressing the roof line and form of the proposed elevation. And then I think keeping that wall where it is on that upper piazza.
Piazza, okay, you weren't talking about the,
Piazza infill.
you're fine with the addition going toward the north, okay.
Yeah, I just think that the roof line and massing needs to be maybe treated in a different way.
I kind of am with you on that, Bill, with regard to this thing. I mean, I generally would be completely opposed to breaking that line of the house, but it is a really unique scenario to have this 12 feet or whatever the dimension is of open space, which kind of allows a new addition in the back to disengage from and push further away from the older part of the house. I think my only question is in how that wall facing the driveway, the parapet and so forth is detailed to make sure that it doesn't appear to be an old part of the house. And that could be the material, it could be the paint color. I think there are a lot of things to talk about there. But a lot. And in this case, I'm in favor of pushing away from the south part of the property to use up a little bit of this area. But maybe it's disengaging the top of the parapet from whatever line or the trim line on the existing part of the house. I think a little bit of it just may kind of echo a bit too much of a screen to me, maybe. And I have no issue with the demo of the deck and the other righting of the other wrongs.
I think that the Chevy dormers are large. I know why they're there. But that style carried to the ridge and as wide as they are, I really think is imposing. It's a pretty substantial departure, I think, from the compatibility with the architecture of the house. So I think that, except for that, I do find the extension beyond the plane of the main house to be obviously something that normally would probably not be acceptable. I'm not sure how you get the space back there otherwise, so I'm not completely opposed to breaking that plane and coming out. I do think that a refinement of how to achieve the space for the staircase with those dormers needs to be worked on. I don't disagree with Bill. Glenn's comment about the parapet. I think that there may be some form of that might be helpful in dealing with the fact that that extension comes out on that side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
I could
strong
be,
one way or the other
right,
with that.
yeah, I think maybe the whole rise of the stair doesn't have to happen on that north side. You know, maybe the stairs turn at a landing and go toward the south so that extension into the, you know, the wrong side of the house doesn't have to be as imposing. So I guess I'm just saying, I think with some geometric shifts, I think
it could really work and achieve what they're trying to achieve.
I also wonder if the shed dormers, I really wish they could disengage from that bridge. But I also tend to think that if they were perhaps clad in roof material, if they were copper and not siding, I think they could also recede. I think we approved something not long ago that the two shed dormers are clad in copper, and that, in my opinion, really helps them recede from being a second living level in a building.
I agree. I think disengaging them from the ridges.
Question of staff, I guess. So, Frankie, you have a comment. Your comment number 3, rear addition should be subordinate to the existing in height, scale, and mass. Staff recommend lowering the overall height of the addition so it does not visually compete with the piazza side of the structure. But then there's a recommendation for conceptual approval. So
We felt comfortable recommending conceptual approval since it was a parapet wall and that could easily be altered, as opposed to the entire mass of the building, which would have to be changed.
even though it's pretty much a screening parapet wall, it doesn't really return. It's just a screen.
Screen and it.
Right now, it's hiding what would be a really awkward.
If it gets lower than that.
And it was something that we struggled with because in elevation, that parapet somewhat competes with the piazza, though we know that it's not going to on site because it is so far back.
I guess then my only question for the board members would be if everyone's voiced some form of concern of the, either be it the height of the roof form of the addition, would you guys be more comfortable seeing the solution as a board or staff taking a look at it? I guess is the question. I'm trying to get towards a motion here.
Yeah, I think it should be a deferral personally for height, scale, mass, and architectural direction of the addition, but just one person.
She thinks it should be a deferral so that we can see it again.
I think. I'll disagree with that. I think it needs. I don't, frankly, were you saying that the parapet needed to come down or the ridge needed to come down on the addition?
Overall height of the addition.
I'm saying we were talking about overall height.
Staff comment.
So that would lower the ridge.
That's right.
Yeah.
So really, it's just a question of, are you comfortable with staff's recommendation that it have a final review by staff, or would you guys rather see it again?
Well, in my mind, I don't want to lead them down a dead end road. So if we're talking about the ridge of the addition moving, I'm looking at what it says on his drawing as ceiling height. If that ridge came down, I think it may affect whether there's living space there or not. So I want to make sure we're clear. And I think the other thing we need to be upfront about is where are we, like if we're deferring, where are we as a group with regard to the northward addition so that they could update or
How are we gonna make a motion?
I don't, I'll be honest, I don't think the ridge height is out of scale.
Right. It's more the match of that addition.
And I think that that's created at that upper level, that's created by the door. I think if you could
I could almost,
fix that, I don't think the ridge height is too high.
I could almost imagine a 2-story volume, maybe even separated by a hyphen, behind the current house with something extending to the north that's just not as imposing as what this is.
And to that point, I'm looking on Street View at the addition that was put on the back of the adjacent neighbor, which is a different house, it's a corner lot, all of that, but it might be more clean because it is a two-story volume with a very low pitch roof that doesn't, I mean, it connects to the house, but in a relatively non-awkward fashion.
So I'm gleaning that y'all want to see it again. Okay. So
I also think we could approve a couple of, if it mattered,
Yeah,
like demolition and so forth.
yeah, if you guys want to say that the board is generally fine with the direction of an extension to the north side of the property, given the extenuating siting of the building on the property, I think that's fair. We're just saying it's okay, but to restudy the height and form of the addition. Is that a fair way to put it?
That's it, yeah. Maybe
That way,
decrease
at
the
least you know
intention.
you're tangible. Yes, you can go to the north, but we're just saying, can you restudy the height and form of the additions? I think that's what I'm surmising here. So, I'll call it a deferral. I'll make a motion for a deferral. With staff's comments. 3 and 4. And a board comment that the proposed extension of the wall of the second floor piazza approved that that wall location remain where it currently is.
Very to specify the demolition was approved.
I think so. Did you want to add to your motion that demolition of that?
Demolition
porch
of
is
that
approved?
contemporary deck is approved, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for approval of the demolition of the deck, that rear deck, and deferral with staff comments, well, all staff comments, and a board comment, proposed extension of the wall of the second floor piazza. Well, that, basically that the existing wall of the second floor piazza remain where it is. Do I have a second?
Okay, second.
Right, with the motion to a vote, Glenn?
Yeah.
Belmar?
Yea in favor.
Bill?
Yeah.
Julia? Chair votes in the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. DeYoung, Mr. Marshall.
Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
Okay, agenda item number 10, 624.5 Rutledge Avenue. Frankie, you'll provide an introduction overview of the project, please.
624.5 Rutledge is requesting conceptual approval for pergola over existing patio. It is not surveyed in North Central in the Historic Corridor District. For the board's information, they previously had a staff approval for awnings over this patio, and then the building department required it to be a fixed structure and meet code. So staff could approve the awnings that was done a couple of years ago, but could not approve the pergolas, which is why we're here with this. Anyway, this is the existing structure on the corner of Rutledge and Eugene. Existing site photos. Text. And Sanborn maps showing the history of the property. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
She said this is the Berkeley's restaurant on the corner of Rutledge and Fuji. I wanna clear up something though. You guys said pergola. This is a covered shed roof that's going over. It's not open structure. To me, pergola usually means open structure. And what, all we're
I
doing
think
right now.
pergola
is
was
just-
on the, application. Oh, I think it said awning and
Or it
worded
might
it
say canopy or something like that. But right now, what they've got is they've just got in their outdoor eating, as the picture shows, just a series of umbrellas. And it was about 2.5 years ago, they called me to drawings to create a permanent structure instead of the awning. It was a kind of a mechanical awning that came out and wasn't approved. So what we've done here is we just are framing, for the framing drawings with cedar, rough cedar, and putting a metal, MBCI metal roof over the whole thing so that as the people are outside eating, they're covered up as well as the staff that serves them. The tie-in will be just under the skylights that are existing, and then it'll go out to basically the sidewalk on the outer skirts of the property, concrete coming out of the restaurant, and then brick pavers on either side of that.
Any
As simple as I can make it, I don't know.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Just a technical question about zoning approvals, that's all been taken care of, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant?
What is the pitch of that roof?
There's a pitch, it's a 1/2 to 12.
It's a 1/2 to 12.
Yeah, that's why it's gotta be metal. And the whole reason it's a 1/2 to 12 is we don't wanna take out the skylights that are there. And based on their location, that's the slope we have to have in order to come in under the skylights and tie in with this unit.
See, you're using LVLs for your primary.
Right.
Is treated for exterior use? Are they treated?
They have to be treated being outside.
Yeah.
I call them LVLs, but I think they're SVLs or something like that
VSO,
technically.
yeah. Yeah, okay, all right, good. Okay, yep.
Is there a standing seam gobble in?
It's an MBCI, it's not standing seam, it's not, it's exposed fasteners. If you look at drawing A2, I think it's called out, number 9 or something. Again, not to spend a lot of money because if a screw comes out there, you just get back up, put a washer on it and put it back down. It's outdoors.
Any other questions? Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking from the public? All right, Frankie, could you give us city staff comments and recommendations, please?
We had a comment about the roof being very flat and we're concerned about drainage issues. So we didn't note the slope, but we were also confused and wanted to make sure that wasn't a rendering issue because it did look steeper in one of the drawings than the others. I think the elevation looked a little bit steeper. Staff recommend changing the proposed gutters. It looks like K-style are proposed and we typically support half round. And we recommend minimizing appearance of ceiling fans since they appear rather large on one of the drawings. Staff recommendation is conceptual approval with staff comments and applicant to work with staff on details for final.
Thank you, Frankie. Did the applicant want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the staff comment?
Again, the only thing would be the slope, 1/2 to 12 is very typical for a metal roof, so. And I have to do that in order to tie in underneath those skylights.
All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I agree about the half round gutter because that's actually probably the more visible of all of this. And I don't know, if dinner get canceled because of a thunderstorm before sun, support it.
I've watched it over the years, go through so many iterations.
Stable, successful restaurant there.
Yep, for sure.
Busy and people sit out there. People sit out there a lot, so
Yeah.
we'll get used
I mean, I think this is most of their seating.
It is, yeah.
Or
Yeah, there's
a
not
large
much-
volume of it.
There's not much space inside of that.
Right. So I'm
12.
conceptually, I'm fine with it, and I think staff and the applicant can coordinate on some of those details.
Make a motion.
I am for conceptual approval with staff comments and applicants to work with staff on details.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments and applicant to work with staff on details for final. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Glenn. I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn. Chair votes for the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 11 is 12 Ashley Avenue. Frankie, could you give us an introduction and overview, please?
Ashley is requesting to paint existing unpainted brick structure. It is not surveyed in Charlestown, circa 1935, in the Old and Historic District. This is the location on Ashley Avenue. Existing site photo. Some context of Ashley. And sample maps showing the history of the structure. And I will turn it over to the applicant.
I'm Ben Smiley with Upsell. Try and keep it brief. Frankie, do you by chance have the photo of the sample in the back of the structure?
That one?
Yes, ma'am. So we're seeking approval to apply a German schmear is what's known as. It's like a heavy lime wash that has aggregate in it, basically in white to the structure. So painting it, but we're looking to use a material that is more compatible with masonry as its masonry itself.
Any questions for the applicant?
Are you able to confirm that the current brick dates to 1935, is original or not original?
I haven't looked too much into that. It does appear to be wire cut brick, which means it should be a newer brick. I have to look back at exact dates. I'm not exactly sure when wire cut brick was more prominent, but it is not a historic brick. It's a more modern brick for sure.
I had the same question because when I first looked through this, it doesn't scream 1935 to me, but and just for your knowledge, I think 1935 brick we would treat very differently than 1965 or 75 brick.
It's like St. Joe's brick from the 1960s.
Staff, is there any knowledge? Or?
We couldn't find anything,
No more questions?
though we did agree on the age of the brick.
That it was
You what?
not original?
That it didn't look like 1935 brick.
I do know that some of the neighboring structures do appear to have the same style of brick, so there may have been a change in the neighborhood at a certain point in time. And that brick itself.
Any more questions? All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment?
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. We've reviewed the application for painting the existing unpainted brick structure 12 Ashley. Secretary of the Interior Standards state for rehabilitation states the historic character of a property will be retained and preserved. The alteration of features that characterize the property shall be avoided. The variegated vertical scratch brick veneer at 12 Ashley Avenue is typical of the 1930s and 40s construction and is a character defining feature of this house. Painting the brick will dramatically change the character of the house. Furthermore, due to the texture of this brick, the application of the paint will be an irreversible alteration. We respectfully recommend denial of this request. And I did not go look at this house in person, but I have a house with the same brick from 1940. And a lot of the houses in Minor Terrace have the same brick, same vintage. So I'm kind of thinking it's very likely that it is original. Role play with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society cannot support altering the exterior brick as this goes against the Secretary of the Interior standards that specify historically unfinished materials should remain unfinished. The exposed brick exterior is characteristic of its colonial revival style and therefore important to maintain. We especially struggle with the faux patina appearance of this finish, which could convey a false sense of history. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking from the public? Frankie, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Since it's already been quoted twice, I will not repeat again Secretary of Interior standard. But staff recommended denial, as we have not yet come up with our painting of brick guidelines that Bill and Fillmore are so interested in helping with. I recommended denial. I did say that before I commented Bill
Oh,
and
I'm
Fillmore.
sorry. Thank you. Did the applicant want to respond to anything raised in the city staff comments or public comment?
I do just want to point out that the lime washing and painting of brick in Charleston is something that is seen extensively around town. Now that preserving the history of the building is very, very important, I don't necessarily think that this takes away from that fact.
Thank you. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote. Glenn, do you have a question?
I'm just trying to figure out a way that if they could prove that it's not 1935, right?
But
I think that's.
on that, you know, lacking evidence to the contrary, that brick's been around at least since the turn of the 20th century, so, and probably earlier.
I just looked and the wire cutting presses was patented in 1863.
Yeah, so wire cut brick has been around a long time, and so it's, you know, like lacking, you know, evidence to the contrary. I would assume that this brick is original, and appearance-wise, you know, it's got that the different color brick, which tends to mimic glazed headers, which you would see on an older building. I think that's not uncommon in this style brick. So I'm inclined to think that painting is probably not a great idea. I think it's probably 1930s brick. I think the style and coloration of the brick is intentional. It's not arbitrary. So I would be kind of disinclined to paint it, I think.
Would the board members, would the decision change if you found clear evidence that it was 1960s brick? And if that's the case, then I think we should ask the applicant to find that clear evidence. But if the decision is still, you know, regardless of age.
Yeah. I think if the brick were not original to the building, it might make a difference.
I mean, I think I would support denial of this original brick. But if proof were brought that it's much newer vintage, then
I mean, I'll admit, even if it is original, I'm kind of torn just because of the this particular brick just seems very cold and machined, and the color palette is not particularly pleasing. But
Pretty popular back in the day.
yeah,
The neighbors have it too.
I was gonna say with, you know, with thoughtful selections of the paint colors for trim work and the front door, I think the existing effect could be improved. But it's where, if it were gonna be lime washed, that modeled effect, well, I'm not a big fan of that. I'd rather see it just
Schmear?
heavy, well, I mean, schmear's fine, but give me more.
Well, I don't know if Schmear looks on the texture of this brick.
Just a lime wash, yeah.
It looks like I can go ahead and make a motion for denial. It looks like that's where everybody's headed with staff's comment.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for denial with staff comments. Do I have a second?
I'll make it do it. Make it. It's not
If he wants to
original.
come back, that's all good. I don't know how he's gonna do it, unless there's some sort of compression test. I think brick
Well, you can
could get
determine
harder or softer.
the orientation of magnetic particles.
Or he could contact records management and see
Yeah, there
if
may
there
be
was a.
some records on it, that's true. But yeah, I think as we stand, all we can review, I'll just make a motion for denial with staff's comment.
He could still come back.
Sure, yeah,
Sure.
new information, new day.
Check staff records first before undertaking.
Someone else?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial with staff comments. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Fillmore. The motion to the vote. Glenn?
In favor.
Julia?
Yay, nay.
Bill?
Yeah,
Fillmore?
Yea, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 12 was withdrawn by staff. We have already addressed agenda item number 13, so I will once again revisit agenda item number 2, 15 Maverick Street. Is the applicant here? All right, we have a motion on the floor to defer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. We also need to revisit agenda item number 7, 12 month report. Is the applicant in attendance? Hearing none, do I have a motion to
Motion to defer.
defer?
Motion to defer.
Thank you, Bill. Oh, gosh.
Defer automatically to the following meeting, is that?
Until the applicant notifies us they want to.
Who seconded that? Did I have a second?
So it's not automatically within 2 weeks?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I would have to, I can confirm with the applicant.
Madam Chair, a motion to adjourn.
So, do you have a second? Glenn? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed?